Hello and welcome to another episode. I'm your host, Auriemma McKay, architect and interior designer known as the Dream Home Manifester. Before we start, I wanted to remind you to check out the Facebook group Real Estate Professionals Network and Stress-Free Remodeling Exchange. You know, we all lead very busy lives, and sometimes we end up overcommitting ourselves, which puts us in a state of overwhelm and we get stressed. When we're in that state, we can't really function at our best. To avoid getting in that state, my guest Takara Shelor will share her special techniques to get us balanced and live a magnificent life. Takara is a best-selling author, award-winning speaker, engineer, and consultant. She helps people discover their unique magnificence, regain confidence, and heal the past to achieve personal freedom, success, and a lot more joy. Having enough stress, she left a high-paying engineering management career in the pharmaceutical industry to move to an island and co-found a nonprofit for dolphins and whales. She took a deep dive into personal empowerment to manifest success and how to lead a stress-free life. For decades, her revolutionary methods have helped countless people manifest new relationships, switch or launch new careers, and improve their finances and health. In her own life, she's manifested new cars and even business deals. On a personal note, she's been a best-selling author multiple times over, lived in $1 million yacht in Fiji in the South Pacific, and much more. Welcome, Takara.
Hi, great to be here.
Well, I love what you were talking about, wanting people to live a stress-free life. And that's sort of my motto too. I want people to live when they're remodeling their homes stress-free. And by remodeling their home, they're going to live a stress-free life as well. So we've got something right off in common.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love your stories about going from one extreme to the other, from high stress to an island where I assumed you really chilled out.
Chill.
Yeah. What was that experience like? And what did it teach you?
It was fantastic. I mean, I've always loved the ocean, right? And we traveled a lot when I was a child. My parents wanted me to see the US. And so every summer we would do these loops and catch all these different states, and my favorite places were always by water and being near the ocean. And I was working in a really high stress job, and lots of things happened, and I, kind of decided that wasn't for me anymore, right? And so the opportunity showed up to co-found this nonprofit. And so I moved to the San Juans in Washington State, and I hung out with the orcas, and I got to see the eagles flying, and I got to see little deer running in people's yards. And it was the best thing ever. It was just, I spent hours just sitting out in nature and just being and observing. And I started formulating some ideas about how to help people. And I also just help my own self, like we all have issues. We all have things from our childhood or experiences we've had that are less than best. And so I had some inner healing to do. And so I did all that, and now I'm back in the world doing other stuff. I don't live on an island anymore, but I visit. I visit islands fairly often, not in COVID, but
Yeah. It's interesting how much nature can teach us, when we get still and, like you were saying, just observe. I used to do a lot of painting outside, plein air painting, and it's amazing just the little innuendos of light, shadows, and colors. Yes. And like you were talking about observing animals and things, and it gives me chills that we don't really slow down enough to really observe that. And I think it gets us connected with nature and even ourselves. Like you were saying, you really got into a deep dive and into looking at your past and all.
Right.
Now,
exactly.
Now you also mentioned about manifesting cars and business deals. I'm sure my listeners would like to know a little bit about that.
Right. So I kind of have this superpower of manifesting, right? It's like I've sort of understood it, not on purpose, for a long, long time. And it started with when I was going to engineering school. Before engineering school, I thought I wanted to be a business manager. I thought I wanted to be, somebody in a corporation that managed other people, right? I had no idea what that really meant, but that's what I was going to school for. And I used to read Working Woman magazine. And in there one day, this is, like 30 years ago, okay? Somebody in there described creating a vision board. And me, the very logical girl that eventually became an engineer, thought that was just the craziest, most ridiculous thing ever, right? Because I'd never heard of it. And it didn't make any sense to me. Logic in that didn't, like, how can you put pictures on a wall and you get the things in your life? Like, how can that possibly work? But it did, right? Because I looked at that magazine as my go-to for all things business success, I let my logic, I put it aside and I just said, okay, if they think, I'll do it anyway, even though I think it's stupid, because I literally did think it was stupid. Now I teach it, right? But back in the day, anyway, so I made this board, and they were talking in this particular article about, making almost like a pie and having slices where this is, so it would be balanced. So you'd have different parts of your life. So you're trying to manifest, better health and relationships and money and career and whatever you want, travel. So I was dating a guy, and I put a picture of him and some wedding rings beside it on my board. And then I've always, like I said, I love the tropics. I love the island. So I put beautiful turquoise water and white sand and palm trees. I had some picture of some islands and where. And then money, of course, like just a pile of money wherever I found a picture of that. I saw in a magazine this really cool looking car, which at the time was a gold RX-7. And I'd never seen one on the street, but I saw it in a magazine. I thought it was very, very sexy. And my dad has always been into racing. He's a mechanical engineer that built race cars. So, I like a fast, sleek, sexy car. Okay. So I put that picture on there, and I had some other stuff. Right. And then I broke up with a boyfriend who was then a fiance. So I took the board down because his picture was on it. Right. And I didn't really think about it anymore. But one day I was driving, it almost makes me cry. I was driving my brand new gold RX-7. And I'm driving down the road, and I'm like, wait a minute, I've seen this car before, and suddenly I think I remember the poster and I remember everything on there. And I was like, okay, I've got the car. The guy and I had wedding rings. Literally, we'd already got our rings. We were looking for a house. I decided he wasn't the right guy for me. Like, when I projected out 5 years, I was like, how we're going to be living, who he's going to hang out with. I didn't like it. It just didn't feel, there were lots of issues, but I knew it wasn't right. So I broke up with him, but we did have the rings, right? We actually had the wedding rings. And he and I had gone to Miami Beach on vacation. So I'd gone to the tropics. That picture had happened, right?
You got your white sands and water. Yeah.
My white sands and palm trees. And I was paying my way through college and buying this new RX-7. So clearly I had the money. And I was like, oh my God, this stuff works. Who knew, right? So I've used vision boards for everything, but I've also studied, manifesting, and I've helped other people since then. But I was only like 20 years old when I started getting what I want, It was a real turning point for me. It really was.
I can validate the vision board, because I've done one too, and just about everything's come to fruition from that board. And you don't really become conscious of it in a way, but just the fact you, in a sense, made a commitment, I'll say, by putting something on that board and having that intention, something happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I talk a bit about it in my new book that's coming out, but part of it is, for me personally, what I think is happening, right? Anything that you continually tell your subconscious mind is important, it pays attention, right? So the fact that you might glimpse it periodically as you walk by this board, or you have it in your office or wherever it is, like, you don't have to sit and stare at it all day. It's just that it catches your attention periodically, even just from the periphery. It doesn't even have to be stare, it can be just you glance as you go by. But the other thing is, like you said, the intention. you took the time to figure out what you want, and then go find the right picture that represented that. And then you cut it out and you pasted it on a board and you arranged it. So there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of intention, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of focus. And those are the things that matter, right? And that's just putting more energy on these things. Like, you've taken that much time to focus on this specific stuff. And then when you continuously remind your subconscious, yes, by looking at it periodically as you glance, that's what happens.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it was interesting what you were saying, that you made it into a pie so that everything was balanced. I hadn't heard that before, but that's kind of an interesting concept too.
Yeah.
But I guess you can make it bigger if you want to travel more. You make that pie slice bigger.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
I've done them a million different ways. Like, I've done actual photo albums where I make a whole page that's just one area of life. Like, I really do believe in having areas of life represented, your health, your relationships, your career, whatever it is, your spiritual life, whatever that might be, like all those things, because we need to be in balance, right? What we tend to do, especially in North America, is we focus on career. If we have family, we tend to focus on them a lot. And that's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of that, but it means that sometimes our health suffers. Sometimes we don't spend as much time with our friends or connecting with them as we could or should. We don't take enough time for ourselves. So that's why I kind of like the idea of making sure all are represented when we're choosing goals and, when we're creating these tools that assist us.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's basically what you teach, right? Living a balanced life, which is important for success, increasing your productivity, and even, in your business life and personal life. But you talk about 4 areas that should stay in balance. Tell us about those areas.
So, we were talking about multiple areas, but this is a little bit different in that I read this book years and years and years ago, right? About the same time that I made that board, I was switching to engineering, and I was reading What Color's Your Parachute, right? That's been around forever. They still make new episodes of it because my son, who's now 22, I bought one for him and for one of his best friends. I was like, this book changed my life. It helped me get focused. I mean, they ask beautiful and very insightful questions in there, and they really do help point you in the right direction. Well, the guy that wrote that book also wrote another book, and it's called The 3 Boxes of Life. Okay. And what he was saying in the book is that 3 areas of your life need to be in balance, and that is work, play, and learning. And they need to be in equal amounts. And he's talked about, you could do all of them in the same day. You could do, 1 week you work and 1 week you do this. And, you have to build your life around however you choose to do this. But they really do need to be in balance. And I mean, I really took that to heart. And especially once I left the corporate world and I could make my own schedule, I really do adhere to that idea. But over the years, and especially getting into helping people with stress, I realized that there's another area. There's this piece that most people really ignore, and that is just being. Just being. Like, with work, play, and learning, you're still sort of planning things. You still sort of have a schedule. You're still saying, okay, we're going to go play squash today, and we're going to go, kayaking tomorrow, and we're going to work now, and I'm going to read today. And it's like, that's still all scheduled. That's still all organized. And it's like, you got to have time to just sit. You just need, that can be in nature. That can be by yourself. It can be, some people like to journal. Some people just like to sit and listen to music. My partner on this book I've got coming out, he likes to listen to just specific kinds of music. I prefer silence, or what I really prefer is to go out in nature next to a stream and just listen to the water falling over the rocks, right? I could just do that for hours. Nice. And I do that sometimes. It's how I decompress. It's how I chill. It's how I give myself permission to just recuperate from all the stress of activity and schedules and too many Zoom calls and, whatever else we're all doing these days, right? It's like, we just need time to be where there's no agenda at all. You know, you can take a
Yeah.
nap, you can sit in the sun, like it doesn't matter. I think that also has to be part of what we plan.
Well, that's interesting. Those two pieces that you mentioned, learning, that's not usually included in things when you're reading about balance, and
Right.
also just being. I
Right.
mean, who would think that's valuable? But I know it is. I've experienced
Yeah.
it maybe a few times. That's, I have to listen to what you're saying and follow those ideas too, because when you sit and you just, let things go, so many new creative ideas come up.
Yes,
You do relax, you just let things go. And I know that's really hard for all of us to do, but
it
it's
is.
so important. Thank you
It
for that
is.
reminder. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other thing, so while we're talking about it, and I just had this like, okay, talk about this. So there's something that I find really important, and that is to know if you're an introvert or an extrovert, right? There are people who are introverted, and that means that, and my definition may not be, clinically correct. Okay. I'm just saying this is how I view it. So when you're introverted, you need time by yourself to re-energize. Okay. And sometimes that, for some people, that means reading a book. For some people like myself, I am a media junkie, right? I will stream TV or movies, but that is how I refuel. Okay. The more stressed I get, the more important it becomes. All right. And it's about giving yourself permission. So when you read about success, you read about achievement. One of the things that all the experts will pound into is turn off the television, right? They were like, turn it off. You got to work. You got to, and it's like, yeah, no, sometimes you need to refuel. And if your way to refuel is to be in front of the television and escape into whatever the story is, that's how you need to refuel, right? So for the other people, the extroverted people, they need to be around other people. That is how they refuel. They need to. And I don't know how it works for them, like with telephone calls and Zoom calls, like one of the things I do, it's kind of a being thing, is every single Friday in my schedule is a call with my very best friend who lives in Austin, Texas, right? We have it scheduled. It is in our calendars. We just get on the phone. We have girl talk, right? Most people would do that in the evenings or something. But because of my schedule and her schedule is Friday afternoon at noon, like that is it. And that's critical for me to reach out and have a friend that, we talk about nothing, or we talk about deep subjects, whatever. There's no agenda, but it's there. We are there for each other. We're there to connect. That may not be enough for people in COVID that are extroverted, but it's, so anyway, it's about acknowledging those things about yourself, because that also involves balance, right? And in relationships, it can be business partnerships, it can be romantic partnerships. But if somebody's introverted and somebody's extroverted, because I also talk about that, right? I teach about things about getting married. I talk about all kinds of subjects, but when somebody's an introvert and somebody's an extrovert in a business relationship or another relationship, you need to honor this person's need to be around people and this person's need to not. I know people that are married and they go to a party in separate cars because one person is only there for like till 8 o'clock and they're gone, and the other person is going to stay till 11 midnight, whatever, but they honor that in each other. So it's just about, everything's about balance. Everything's about knowing who you are and figuring it out and being okay with it and not making it wrong.
Yeah, well, that's good that they can work that out. That's important.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you did a lot of self-discovery and discovered these things for yourself. What made you want to help other people to learn what you've learned for yourself?
Well, I remember what it was like to be in the corporate world. I remember what it was like to have deadlines, to have pressure, to be constantly have to meet other people's expectations, right? It's immensely stressful. And I don't want that for anybody, right? Because there's tools and there's ways to not be that way. And I literally went up to the edge and went over the edge. I literally had a mental breakdown. I'm not kidding. There's a lot of reasons for that. And it was actually an important piece for me to do, because then I was like, okay, I got to reevaluate my whole life because this is not working, and I don't want anybody to ever go that far. Right. You don't have to, it's not necessary. So I kind of say, I went over the edge, so you don't have to, right? Like, I've been over the edge. It's not very fun. Like, you know,
well, that's being really compassionate for other people. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's, you know, that's why I harp on balance so much. It's like, if you're not in balance, if you're too stressed, if things are starting, if your health's starting to go, if you're snapping at your kids or your spouse, it's like, it's time to chill. It's time to back off, because, you know, it only gets worse, you know?
Yeah. Well, can you share some of the practices that you feel that would be beneficial to get that inner peace? And
Right. Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about the nature piece. Okay. But one of the things that I really recommend is spending time alone in silence in nature. Okay. Now that's not always safe depending on where you live. Right. So in that case, what I recommend is get some friends, socially distance, of course, now, wherever, you know, whatever the rules are right now, but, you know, get some friends where you can go hiking together or go to a park or wherever you're going to go. And during part of your hike, decide that we're all going to just stop and sit and be in silence. That can be 15 minutes, that can be 20 minutes, but that way you're not alone and you're not unsafe, but you're still getting to do it. You're still getting to notice, you know. Another one is meditation. You know, I'm a big proponent of meditation. As soon as I went over the edge, like I mentioned, that was the first thing I learned, and it literally changed my life.
It does.
I've been meditating now for over 20 years. It's almost 30, it might be 30. It's very close to 30 years. That's how I start every single day, is in meditation. There's tons of ways to do it. There's not one right way for everyone. You know, I go to YouTube, there's bazillions of guided meditations, you know, it's easy. Some people tell you to just follow your breath. For new people to meditation, that's really tough. You know, so I like guided meditations for newer people, but there's bazillions of ways to do it. Even walking in nature is a meditation. Running for some people is a meditation. Not if you're listening to your headphones, you know, with like mute, you know, it depends on what you're listening to. If you're listening to a book on tape, that's not it, you know, but if you're listening to beautiful, uplifting music, or you're listening to nature sounds and you're running, I mean, that's very meditative. Another one is there's exercises that move your body, and they don't just work the body, but it's kind of the mind-body connection that gets worked with, aligned, comes into balance when you do them. So one of those is Tai Chi and Qigong. Okay. Another one of those is yoga sun salutations. It's a specific series of exercises. Again, you can go to YouTube. There's probably thousands of people on there showing you how. You just follow one of them, right? And you can alter it depending on your level of health and how strenuous some of it is. But it's just a very quick little thing. But it does some alignment in you. And the final one is less well known. And that is what's known as the 5 Tibetan rites. Not everyone knows about that. But those are the 3 I'm aware of. I'm sure there's more. Okay. But those are really great things. So for me, I do meditation first thing in the morning, followed by these yoga sun salutations. I do like 3 rounds. Takes me 5 minutes, maybe. Okay, that's it. And I start my day, have my hot tea, and I'm good to go.
Sounds good. Yeah, I also meditate in the morning first thing. And I find if I just get up, I'm groggy for a long time. But if I meditate, my head is clear, and you know, sometimes even things I forgot about I need to do, but it's really grounding, and it gets that fog cleared up. So
it does.
Yeah.
And for me, it's also my best spark for inspiration. You know, I write a lot. Obviously you do as well with all these books, right? And so it's like, as soon as I'm done with my meditation, I often have ideas in my head of things that I need to write. And so it brings in creativity and inspiration, The shower is another place where that often happens, but right after meditation for me is another time.
Yes,
Yeah,
I guess inspiration can happen anywhere. So that's good.
absolutely.
We've talked about so many different things and techniques you've given us to keep balanced and keep that inner peace so we can really be a success that we want. And you also mentioned about words that we say to ourselves or to others also makes a difference in our success and happiness. Can you tell us about some of those words?
Yes. So my number one, no, don't ever do, like if there's don'ts, okay, the word I followed by the word am should never be followed by the word sorry, okay, ever, okay. You can say that words, I apologize, right? But what you put behind the words I am is sort of shouting to the universe who you are and what you're about and what you want and who you're becoming. So that sorry word is not it. It's not it. But it's the other thing. Those two words, I am, followed by anything, we need to pay attention to what those are. So the thing about the sorry word, what I noticed over the years, and see, I'm so kind of sensitive. I'm a very sensitive, not emotionally hurt kind of sensitivity, but like I can feel in my body when something's empowering versus when it's disempowering. Okay.
Yes,
So when I hear
true.
certain words or phrases, I'm like, don't say that. That's not good for you. And I try not to call my friends on it too much. That's like rude. But I see a lot of women in particular who say those words all day long. Right. And what I notice about those people who say that all the time, they tend to have low self-esteem. And it's just a constant, they're not good enough. They're not enough. They're apologizing for who they are and what they're doing in life. And it's like, no, please don't do that.
Yeah.
You're magnificent. You're amazing. You have amazing potential. Stop apologizing for just living. Like, no, right? And so what I find is, and I was doing it too, okay? That's part of how I know. But when you pay attention and you listen, and the second you say it, you're like, oh, let's rewind that, When you stop saying it and you get used to not saying it, you do have higher self-esteem. So whatever we put behind I am matters. And so we don't want the word sick there. We don't want, you think about it. It's like, I don't feel well. Okay, you don't feel well, right? That's very different. So that's my big one is I am, and whatever you put behind it. And sorry, it's not the word. But another one that also is true is whenever you just the phrases that we say, and there's not one, it's just thinking about what you're speaking, right? This really got brought to my attention when I met this woman. I was at a retreat and we were having lunch, and she just started telling this story. And she had been clinically diagnosed with a debilitating eye disease that it's incurable. Okay. She was slowly going blind, and she had perfect vision for a long time. And then suddenly this onset happened where she was suddenly not being able to see, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And eventually she wouldn't be able to see at all. And so she was going to doctors, and they're all saying there's nothing we can do. And that, and so she decided to go way outside her comfort zone and go to some like alternative or complementary health place to see what they could say. Cause like she wasn't ready to just give up. And so she got outside her comfort zone and she went to some healer or another. And they asked her questions, and they said, why don't you just talk about yourself? Tell me who you are. Tell me about your life. And the lady was taking notes, and she was just talking and talking and talking. And finally the woman stopped her and she said, okay, time out. She said, do you know that in the last 10 minutes, you used the words, I hate to see 7 times? She used those words and it was manifesting, right? I hate to see how they're treating the children. That was her phrase, and it was becoming real, right? So really pay attention to, I used to say, this is words, I shouldn't say it out loud. Okay, I'm telling the universe, I'm not doing this anymore. But my phrase used to be, I can't stand it when, management's this or whatever's in the news, or it doesn't matter. That was my phrase. I had such low back pain. It was crazy. And standing in one place, it hurt all the time. I stopped saying it. I took other actions too, but I stopped saying that, right? I don't have low back pain. So it's amazing the difference it can make.
It is. I had a friend had the same phrase, I can't stand it, and she broke her ankle, and she realized that, so she stopped saying that phrase too.
Right, right. Yeah, we just have to, we've been trained that it doesn't matter what we say. And so we get in conversations and we just babble and we don't really listen to ourselves. You know, it takes practice. I think that if you meditate, it's easier. There's something about it helps you tune in more and pay attention more because it's working different parts of your brain. So you have this ability to be more perceptive and self-aware. But yeah, it's really important.
I like that. Well, this might tie into what we're talking about, because in your book, you talk about identity theft.
Yeah.
And it's probably, you're not probably talking about your credit card and bank.
No, I'm not talking about the credit cards.
Yeah. Tell us what you mean by that.
Right. So this actually, I didn't come up with this. Actually, my business partner and co-author on this book came up with this, but he calls it identity theft. And it's when we let other people dictate what we think our dreams should be. Right? Like, in fact, this happened recently. A very close friend of mine, I usually make it a practice to never share my dreams and visions with anyone else as a manifesting practice, right? I found that we have a lot of reasons for that, but occasionally, like if you're in collaboration with someone, the two of you need to create that goal or vision for the success of something. Like, what does it mean if this is successful? You have to create that together. So married people need to do that and business partners need to do that. But otherwise, it's better not to share. But I was on the phone with a good friend of mine and she said, you know, what is your biggest dream right now? What do you want to accomplish? And because she was a dear friend and I thought she knew how all this worked, I told her. And the first words out of her mouth was, no, 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 it needs to be this. And I was just like, what?
She didn't know how it worked.
She didn't know how it worked. But so that's like really blatant. That's a blatant way where someone is literally trying to hijack your dreams because they think they know better, right? But we do it, we give it that power away to people all the time where we listen to the experts and, you know, we look at what television tells us and the news and magazines and what it means to be successful. And you got to have this fancy car and you got to take trips here and you got to live in this kind of house. And, you know, we let others dictate our definition of success. And what we find is that doesn't necessarily bring us joy, right? Because where you want to live may not be where I want to live, right? One of us may be a mountain person, the other person may be a beach person. You know, one of my favorite places I ever lived is Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's in the middle of the high desert. I love it there, right? That is not for everyone. All that adobe and all that sun, and that's not for everyone. It is definitely for me. And so is the beach, and so is, I like them all. I like them all. But you have to know, like you have to really inner reflect and get very clear about what makes you happy, you know, because sometimes you go after a goal because you thought it was a good goal to go after because you heard somewhere that it was a good thing to achieve, but you get there and you're just not satisfied. You're not fulfilled. You're like kind of let down. Now what, you know, eventually you realize, oh, I have to pick my own goals. I have to pick my own dreams. I have to figure out what I really want and not let anybody else do it. And so that's what we're talking about with identity theft.
Yeah, well, that's sometimes hard, really finding out what's going to bring you joy and what you really want to do. And
Right.
Going back to what you said about having others kind of crush our dreams. I was in I think it was 5th grade, and we were doing a science project. I love to draw the planets. And, you know, at that time, people are asking you, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? So my teacher asked me as I was drawing one of my planets, and I said, I want to be a scientist. And she said, oh no, you can't be a scientist. You're a girl.
Oh
So it was
no.
like, oh. So we got our little books, you know, well, I guess I'll be a gym teacher or something like that. well, I fixed her, I became an architect. So it's kind of
Right.
in that realm.
It
So
is. It's very
it's,
technical.
yeah, it's
Exactly.
really hard. And even your peers, can have effect on what they think of you. You may have higher aspirations than your peers,
Yes,
so it's
absolutely.
your environment too, and you want to keep your environment to support you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that famous saying that the 5 people you spend the most time with, you are going to be, the the balance or the middle ground of whoever those people are. That's true of your weight and your health. That's true of your health, your finances and your career. Like, when you want to step up your game, you kind of have to start surrounding yourself with different people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you leave all your friends behind. Sometimes you do. And that's not comfortable. That's not comfortable at all. But sometimes it's necessary, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of the downside of success. But hey, it depends on what brings you joy and what makes you happy. And
Exactly.
not about unkindness. It's about where does your heart say you need to be. So I'll tell you a little game that I learned a long time ago about your heartfelt desire, right? It's something in the book, but it's called what we call the mirror exercise. And it's if you think you might want this or you think you might want this, you go into the bathroom and you stare in the mirror and you talk to yourself and you describe the first one and you just watch your expression. Are you smiling? Are you excited? Are you talking a little faster because you're getting all excited about it? Or are you like, okay, well, this is probably a good idea, but I'm not really sure, right? That if you can see it in your face, you can see it in the sparkle in your eyes, you can see it in how animated you get. I mean, you can clearly see I'm very animated sometimes, but your excitement shows in your face. You can literally see when it's a heartfelt desire versus when it isn't. It's one tool that you can use to figure that out.
Yeah, that's an interesting exercise.
Yeah.
that you really see your truth right there.
Right.
Good.
Right.
Well, this has been really interesting. We have little glimpses of what you teach and some of your techniques and things, but you basically say you teach goal achievement, and there's a lot of other people that do that, but you have some really special, unique things that people actually achieve. Can you tell us a little bit about those differences?
Right. So when a lot of people talk about goal achievement, they give little bits and pieces and it tends to stay, they're very theoretical. Okay. But what we've discovered is that there's actually a 5-step formula for manifesting, for achieving goals, and all the elements have to be in place. And so we've taken this theoretical thing and made it practical, made it doable, made it understandable. And so it's, actual exercises, yes, it involves mindset. Yes, it involves action. A lot of people think you can wish it into reality. Like that's occasionally that happens, but it's very rare, right? Most of the time you have to actually do things. And sometimes those things you have to do are way outside your comfort zone. If you're going after a big goal, the bigger the goal, the more outside your comfort zone you tend to have to be in your actions. They have to be the right actions. But the biggest difference, the thing that I bring to the party, the thing that I teach a lot about is that one of the most important things for goal achievement or achieving anything is your intuition. Okay. Your intuition is your superpower, and enhancing it and fine tuning it or finding it in the first place is really important because, well, I'll give you an example. The first book I ever launched, I mean, clearly you've launched some books and you know what a big deal it is behind the scenes. The first time I launched a book, because I'm an engineer and I make lists and I do these things, right? I studied everything I could find on book publishing and launching and all the steps you need. I ended up with a spreadsheet that had 450 line items.
Oh my gosh.
450. And that was just the first page. Some of those line items had a whole other page that said, you got to do all this to make that one thing happen. And I looked at this list and I was like, there is no way I can do 450 things to figure out, to launch a book. I'll be, 10 years, I'll still be doing the list, right? So what I finally, it's kind of like I just tuned in And I asked, so I prayed about it. I asked the universe, however you want to word that. But I was like, what's the most important? Point me in the direction of where I need to start with this. I can't do this list. It was so overwhelming. I didn't even want to start, right? And I was guided to 3 things. Well, I was like, oh, I can do 3 things. That's easy. Now, some of the 3 things had a bunch of stuff underneath them, but rather than 450, it was more like 50, and it was great. It was, and I hit, the bestseller list, and it was like, okay, this is doable, right? So meditation really helps with enhancing intuition and learning to tune in and really feel and really ask. There's lots of ways to enhance intuition, but that's kind of the superpower for manifesting is your intuition.
I was going to say, I love how that all ties in with your manifesting and finding your inner peace and de-stressing and all that. So that's a really interesting piece that, like you say, not many people include that in their teachings, which is good. Now, you mentioned your book, and I know you have one coming out soon. People listening to this down the line, it may have already launched, but tell us the name of your book so they can find it.
So I have to read it because the subtitle is so long. I never remember. Okay. So the title itself is Unleash Your Future. And the subtitle is The Powerful 5-Step Formula to Transform Your Dreams into Reality Through the Law of Attraction. Okay. And my co-author is Mark Boldazar, and it is coming out April 30th of 2021.
That's great. So, and we'll put it in the show notes so people can find it and they don't have to memorize the whole title. Yes. So that's great. So you also have a gift for my listener. Tell us about that.
I do. So with this book launch, we have a whole website dedicated to manifesting, goal achievement, all that sort of thing. And the website is newscienceofsuccess.com. Very simple, newscienceofsuccess.com. And if you just go to that main homepage, there's links to get our free gift. And if you do that, the free gift is this booklet, this blueprint on how the law of attraction really works. And you can see the formula. You can get the formula. Yeah, you can get the formula. And if you like what you see there, you can get the book. Yeah. And if you feel like you get enough out of the formula with the blueprint, then that's great.
Well, that's exciting. Now we can manifest. Hopefully it's good things, good relationships, health, right, and wealth, of course, too, which we all want. Well, this has been really a treat, Takara. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing all your techniques. And I think we'll have a different perspective on our schedules now. I love how you included the just being, and what was the other thing, being and learning,
work, play, learning, and being.
And have a better intention on that. So thank you so much for all your wisdom with us.
It was a delight to be here. I really appreciate you inviting me, and enjoy and utilize those tools and those things.
Good. Well, thank you.